Okay, hello, and thanks for joining us today. This webinar is being recorded, so if you could please be sure you are muted, and if you turn off your camera, that would be a little bit easier for our viewers to see it in the future. You will be able to turn back on the camera and the muted part at the end to ask your questions. You can also put questions in the chat throughout the program. Okay, and I am Alana Turner. Wanda mentioned it earlier. I am the chair of the Maryland Retired School Personnel Association's Consumer Education Committee, and we are bringing you this webinar. I'm sure you will find it very useful and help you plan your future. At this point, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Richard Kraft. He will present estate planning and family gifting strategies. I'm sure we will gain some great insights from him. He has been an LPL financial planner at Academy Financial Incorporated. He provides comprehensive financial planning and business succession strategies to business owners and retirees throughout the United States. He has been a financial planner since starting his own practice in 2016, and he has been with Academy Financial Incorporated since 2014. He has many areas of expertise, which include business succession planning, income tax reduction strategies, retirement planning and 401ks, long-term care and retirement income drawdown strategies, and wealth management. I'm sure again that we will all learn a few strategies that we can use in our life. So, Richard, thank you for being with us this morning, and I now turn the program over to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning. That was a very nice intro. Thank you. I didn't even know you had that information. Awesome. I mean, we've been working with the MRSPA for nearly 28, 29 years now. So excited to be here. Love to give a little bit of information. My goal is to have everybody learn one or two little things that they can take away and really apply to their life and help improve. We have confirmed that the chat works. So if you'd like to pose any questions throughout the presentation, I very much welcome a little bit of back and forth. I'm here for you guys. I want to make sure that I answer any questions that you have. If nothing else, write down my email address on here, and you can send me any questions after the presentation or follow up anytime. Our goal is to really help make sure that we improve financial literacy. We give a little bit of information that can help some of you guys make some more confident decisions in life. So today we're going to touch on a little bit of estate planning, family gifting strategies, just a little bit of, hey, getting our house in order in our later years. All right. So, like I said, feel free to pose any questions in the chat as we walk through. As a brief overview, before we jump in, just wanted to touch on kind of there's five main areas of financial planning, right? So when we think about our finances, there's cash flow, what's coming in, what's going out, understanding the operations of each year. Then there's the asset allocation. That's like your investment accounts, right? So how are we investing our assets? What type of risk are we taking? Then the risk management piece is your insurances. Then there's tax reduction strategies. So how are we getting to the optimal amount of taxes to pay each year? Then the estate planning piece, right? So having our affairs in order, what happens if anything happens to us? Okay. Quick touch on just risk management before we dive into the estate planning, because they go a little bit hand in hand. On the risk management piece, there's certainly during our lifetime, things that we want to ensure for our disability. Certainly, if anything happens to us from a death standpoint, that also includes like providing liquidity for the estate. So it depends what your financial picture looks like. And then certainly long-term care. So a lot of the risk management aspect is transferring risk from protecting our personal assets, right? So that we don't spend through personal assets in case something out of the ordinary happens to us, right? So some things aren't necessarily out of the ordinary. Long-term care is something we can plan for. We have a relative high degree of confidence that eventually, at some point, we might need some sort of assistance with home health care, for example. Um, but anyways, as we continue, the property casualty is a lot of what you think about umbrella rental policies. I always like to just make sure that people review that with independent agents, because there's a pretty big disparity in terms of cost and value in that space. And then just, I mean, from an application standpoint, understanding what the picture looks like. So what type of life insurances do we have? Like making sure that we review beneficiaries is something huge, especially later in life, as some people might be changing in terms of our desired personnel. And the long-term care side of things. So if anybody has any long-term care policies that they want to review, or we want to just address that elephant in the room for protecting against spending down all of our assets, that's certainly something that we can help out with, and we've been helping with our MRSPA for decades now. So we'll move to a quick high level of legacy planning with estate planning is understanding the full picture. And so I like to have a good visual of a legacy pyramid. And it really starts with that foundation of like, am I okay? Do I have my own affairs in order? Are my ducks in a row of financial security? First and foremost, do I have assets set aside that, hey, I'm not going to rely on others for any assistance later in life? So making sure that our house is in order is imperative before we start thinking about others. I know a lot of people that tend to drift towards the family importance and really taking care of kids or grandkids before we have financial stability ourselves. Um, if we don't have that initial foundation and we start taking care of others, to be honest, that tends to backfire a little bit later in life because if we do give too much and we don't have our own financial security, then we tend to eventually rely on kids to take care of us. And it actually provides more of a financial strain at that point, right? So making sure that our house is in order and we have financial stability and we're set for making sure we're not going to spend through our own assets is certainly imperative for then talking about the expansion piece. All right, so that's when we get to, all right, I'm good, and now let's make sure we maximize the family picture, right? So we look at multi-generational, we're looking at kids, the grandkids, understanding how we're getting dollars to the family, whether it stays in trust or if it's just given outright to them. Um, we can go through that in a little bit more detail in a second. And then kind of that tip of the pyramid becomes, hey, great, we have trust in place, we have great financial security. Now I want to consider a little bit more with my community, right? Whether it's our community groups or religious affiliations, how can I give? How can I give in a more tax efficient way and really maximize my giving power, right? So we'll touch on a little bit of each of these throughout today. Let's start with a little bit of estate planning 101. All right. So if we think about it from a big picture standpoint, a lot happens in our life. But assets really pass in three ways. So first is joint ownership. Anything that we own jointly with someone, whether it's our spouse, a friend, a child, a grandchild, it's going to go directly to them. Okay. Beneficiary designations is number two. Anything that we put a beneficiary designation, or if we have a contract, if we have an operating agreement or buy-sell agreement with partners for a business, those beneficiary designations are going to supersede the will, right? That means it goes directly to the people. So then third is wills or trusts. So a will is really a guideline document that the court in whichever state you live is going to get this document, and it's going to be a guideline for how this person desired their assets to pass, who it wanted to go to, right? So that process is called the probate process, right? In some states, that can take 3, 6, 12 months. So there's pretty significant delays. Different states have different rules for that process. For instance, if you wanted it to go to a friend, well, your spouse might be the first one to have an issue with that. And they can challenge that, so it can change who your actual desired beneficiaries are. And then it's public information. You can actually look up the information from probate proceedings and see even who it went to. So there's kind of classic examples with like Prince's estate when he passed and didn't have his affairs in order. But that's really the probate process, and it can be a massive pain. I don't know if you know anyone that has passed in recent years, but it's a pretty painful process that kind of layers on to the issues or the pain that of already having this person leave us. So from a trust standpoint. So that's where really that probate process is what we're trying to avoid, right? So a revocable living trust, for example, is something that we put in place simply to avoid probate. Then it's going to help manage that process. It's going to appoint that next person in. We'll go over that in a little bit more detail in a second. But that's kind of that first line of defense of not wanting our assets to go through probate. Okay. Then, kind of rounding out that estate planning picture, we have powers of attorney. So, financial powers of attorney, certainly, if anything happens to us, if we're incapacitated, if we can't make our own decisions, and our medical directives. So, again, if we can't make our own decisions, then, all right, on the medical side, what are our true desires? And then, just to keep in mind, estate taxes. So, a lot of people don't end up paying estate taxes. Right now, our federal exemption level is up to 15 million, and that's for each person. So between spouses, we can pass $30 million without any estate taxes federally. Okay, so that's why you might not think there's an issue until we have 30 million, but state-wise, in the state of Maryland, it's actually only a $5 million exemption. So each of us, if we're married, there's a $5 million exemption, but anything above that exemption amount is a 16% tax rate to the state of Maryland right now. So there's other more sophisticated approaches from an estate tax standpoint, like irrevocable trust or insurance trust, that we get dollars out of the estate. Not going to go over that today, but if anybody does have any questions on that, certainly reach out and we'll want to address that because I don't like half of our dollars going towards the state and federal governments. I'd rather it go to family. All right. So wanted to just high level go over a revocable living trust because this is something that we don't need an estate tax issue. It's really to help protect our assets from not just ourselves, but our children's and our grandchildren's risk in their lives. So first and foremost, it's to avoid probate, right? So you retitle assets in this trust, and as soon as anything happens to me, my child or whomever I'm designating as the next trustee is going to step in day one and before my funeral even will be able to access the funds and make certain decisions, right? So it's from a speed standpoint, is certainly beneficial. But then, depending on how we structure these trusts, we are actually protecting our children from potential divorce, creditors, so other litigation. If they accidentally hit somebody with a car, then the trust assets are actually protected, right? So my child is fairly young, so they're not married yet. So what I'm also protecting them from is the average age of divorce is 37. So I'm protecting my assets from going to a potential divorced spouse of my child, right? So it's a way to really keep my dollars in the family, right? So that's one of the reasons why we might keep dollars in trust, and really, I'd say control assets from the grave. Um, we want to make sure that the right people get our dollars. We can protect from them spending too much of it. We can give them, call it an allowance, say they can have 5% of the trust every year for living expenses. Now, they can have more for health, education, maintenance, and support as needed. But it's really a way that I'm protecting them from themselves and from overspending and going through all the assets and then being in a financial situation that's not as desirable and I'm not around to help. Okay. An important aspect here when we do design the trust is that we actually have to retitle accounts and properties in the name of the trust. Okay, so investment accounts, any non-retirement investment accounts are really the number one asset that we're updating to be owned by the trust. But real estate is something that we'll also want to include. So it's a way that we're just more efficiently transferring from my bucket, from my lifetime to my next generation. Okay. Moving forward a little bit of kind of during our lifetime, getting dollars to our kids, right? So that's something that a few of you might be thinking about. Now, family gifting strategies. One aspect that I like to address is um, setting up brokerage accounts for my kids. So I want to teach them some financial literacy and responsibility. So I want to look at my own portfolio. And rather than just giving cash each year, they may not know the best way to do it. I want to give them stock, right? So I want to evaluate from a tax standpoint. Talk with your advisor, talk with myself, understand what's my tax bracket and what's their tax bracket. Okay. So a lot of clients we set up, even if the kids are minors, if they're under 18, we set up an UTMA account. It's really a custodial account. It means they're not of age to have their own, but hey, we can set it up for them, right? So we can give them shares of stock, right? So rather than just giving them cash, we can actually gift them stock, and we might want to choose highly appreciated stock in our portfolio that we gift to them because, especially if they're a minor, pretty sure they're in a lower tax bracket than I am, right? They can sell up to $46,000 of capital gains and pay zero taxes on it. Huge from a tax disparity standpoint. So if I have Apple stock that I bought for $1 and now it's worth $30,000, I don't want to sell that because that's a big gain to me. I'm either holding that till I pass and my kids get a step up in basis, or I can transfer that, I can gift that to a kid, a grandkid, and if they're in a lower tax bracket, they might even be able to sell it completely tax free. Okay? Huge point that from a tax arbitrage standpoint, we want to understand what that marginal tax rate is for the family. Okay? So if there's any stocks that have lost value, I don't want to gift those. I want to capture that tax benefit. I'm going to sell those assets at a loss. I'm going to harvest those losses for my own personal account. And then I can either give cash or reinvest it in my portfolio to increase my cost basis and gift other stock. Right? So all starts with just analyzing, hey, my non-retirement account, what are my goals? Who are the family members? How much can I afford to give during my lifetime, right? We want to run those cash flow models and project what's a potential long-term care risk, what are my living expenses, what amount do I need to make sure to set aside just for me, and then how much can I play with in terms of gifting to my family members during my lifetime. Okay. That annual gift amount is currently 19,000. So there's also spousal gifting, right? So we can give up to 38,000 to a single grandchild or child. So that's certainly something that we set up and want to make sure that again the tax aspect is addressed. 529 plans. So let's fund top 529 plans. They're education accounts. We can get a $5,000 a year state income tax deduction for Maryland. If you're in any other state for some reason, then just check your state laws for that. But it's a great way to start funding for our grandkids' education. It's all tax-free growth. And a little unique change that they introduced over a couple years ago was that we can actually convert that to Roth IRAs if we don't use that for education, right? So if it's in there for 15 years, we can convert some of that to Roth IRAs and it's tax-free forever, right? So it's like a Roth contribution, but we actually get a state tax deduction instead of no tax deduction. Huge. Another aspect, I mean, that for yourselves would be an HSA plan. So if you have an HSA plan, or maybe we're not fully retired yet, that's something that you'll want to address and build in if you still can. That's if we have any earned income. Um, on the business side, if let's say we have retired and we have part-time business income or consulting income, maybe we're not fully retired yet, we can get a lot more creative. If we have any self-employment income, then we can add the kids to payroll, grandkids to payroll. We get a tax deduction on paying them, right? Think about all the allowances you've given out, and now we can get a tax deduction on those allowances. That's a home run. Um, Even if they're minors, we can pay them, get up to a $15,000 tax deduction for myself, and they get it tax free. Now that's earned income for them, and we can actually contribute to Roth IRAs for them. So there's no taxes. It gets into a tax-free account forever on all the growth. They don't have to do much planning themselves for them to be millionaires by the time they want to retire. So that can be very powerful if we have any business, right? So even if your kids have a business, that's ideal that we want to have a conversation, understand how we're operating that business, having kids on payroll if they're of age, if they're 21 even, now they can be added to the 401k. There's a lot of tax planning and strategies that we can incorporate with any business owners. So reach out if there's any situation that you want some advice on there. So once we're okay, once the family's okay, maybe we have trust in place already, we've gone over our estate plan, then it becomes community driven, right? So charitable gifting strategies are something that we want to address. Very often I see, oh, well, once I pass, we're going to have 10% of my estate go to XYZ charity that I want to support. I say, why are we waiting until we pass? Why don't we give to them during our lifetime and we can get the tax benefits for it, right? So let's let's make sure that we have a little bit of planning ahead and understand how much we want to gift. We can design certain accounts that are going to be more efficient for this. So one thing that I want to bring up is called a donor advised fund. It's a charitable account, right? So think of you have bank accounts, you have investment accounts. Think of it just as another account that is a charity account. And now what we can do is gift money to this charity account. We get a tax deduction when we gift it to this account, but then we can still manage that account. those dollars have to eventually go to charity, but we can group gift, right? So, quick example is let's say I give $5,000 a year to a charity. Maybe I'm in my last couple years of some higher income, earned income. Maybe I'm working part-time still, and a tax deduction matters more for me now than it does 5 years from now. So, what I want to do is actually think ahead strategically and look at my stock portfolio, my non-retirement investment account. I want to pick the highest appreciated stocks or investments, and I want to gift 25,000 to my charity account. So that 25,000 gets gifted to that charity account. I pay no capital gains on the stocks that I gifted, right? So I might have only bought $5,000 of stock and it's now up to 25,000. Instead of selling it and paying capital gains, I get a full $25,000 tax deduction on that. So I get to avoid capital gains on it. Okay. And then in that charity account, I get to still invest it, right? So that can stay in the same stocks that I had. I can divest it completely tax free. I can reposition that and maybe be a little bit more conservative. But now that's going to be tax free growth because it's in that charity account, right? So now essentially I've already gotten my full tax deduction of that $25,000. It can grow tax free. I'll give my $5,000 this year, but the rest of that $20,000 stays invested. And it's really just going to increase my giving power over time. Okay. I like to get a little creative and fun with it. I have an annual family meeting and we get the kids involved, grandkids involved. Hey, everyone gets $1,000. They get to donate to a charity of their choice. Um, However you want to skin it, but they might have a cause any given year that they want to donate to. So that's part of their Christmas present each year is deciding, hey, which charity we want to give to. So that's kind of setting up that family charitable account that, hey, if I fund that for several years and there's still dollars in it when I pass, my kids just step up and they're going to be the ones to manage it, right? So it isn't a benefit tax beneficial inheritable asset that's not part of our estate as well. So from an estate tax standpoint. So can be a little complicated, but wanted to touch on it because, hey, we can set up a family charitable fund, and that's going to help kind of organize our charitable gifting each year rather than just, yep, I give to my church, I give to here. I don't know how much each year. Well, let's have some structure behind it. Even if you don't set up a fund like this, and we do give to any charities like our church or anything, we can give appreciated stock to them. The least tax efficient is giving cash. That's like our worst case scenario, right? So if they have an endowment, a brokerage account, which most of them do, then we can gift them stock rather than cash, right? Hard to do it in person, but we talk to their advisor and we coordinate gifting that stock from the portfolio. They don't care because they can sell it for free. The capital gains don't matter. It's a tax-free account. They're exempt. So they welcome it, right? So that's definitely something that if we are gifting on a consistent basis and it's more than a couple $100, then let's gift them stock rather than any cash. All right. So that's something that might apply to a lot of you. I would definitely talk about that with your advisor, and it's more tax efficient for us every year because now we don't have to pay capital gains, and we can then put that cash back into our portfolio and increase our cost basis. All right. I won't touch too much on the family foundation. That's if we really wanted to think about higher charity levels on the gifting side and set up a formal foundation as our family foundation. Kids, grandkids could even be employees there. So that's something that we've done with clients. But if that's something of interest, then we can talk about that a little further. I won't bore everyone. So where do I start? It is really one of the bigger things to really just understand. Yes, Beth, there will be a recording going out, I believe. So reviewing current documents. So you might have wills, powers of attorney, medical directives. You might not have a trust yet. If you do have a trust, we definitely want to review that. Um, I recommend every 3 or 4 years, you at least take a look at these things and say, all right, great, yep, all my people stayed the same. That's who I still want. I can't tell you how many times I have ex-spouses still named in documents. So that's a little bit of its own risk. So, um, ensuring that those people are in the right place is certainly something that we want to do every couple years. Reviewing the titling and the beneficiary designations. So bank accounts, investment accounts, so like your retirement accounts, understanding what actually gets titled in a trust versus going outright to kids. Um, just talk to your advisor about it, right? So there are some circumstances where, hey, even if we do have a trust, we're not retitling everything in the trust. So like an IRA or your 403b, any of those retirement accounts, they might go directly to our kids or split between our kids outright rather than in trust. One reason is because there's certain tax laws there, right? So a non-spouse beneficiary has to withdraw those retirement dollars within a 10-year time frame. So if our trust language is restrictive and we can't withdraw that within that 10-year time frame, then we can actually get penalized by the IRS, and we're stuck with the parameters of the trust, and we can't breach that. So we're stuck wasting money paying to the IRS each year for these tax issues, right? So make sure you review the documents, understand what they say, understand what's titled in these different trusts, or at least what the will is saying. You can you can pretty much get by with proper titling and beneficiary designations and not having much hit the will, right? Depends how complicated the situation is. If there's any mixed families, second marriages, highly recommend that you review your estate plan. More often than not, there becomes issues after passing. So reviewing those documents is really number one. Understand what they say. Now, houses, so the deeds of properties, do not gift these. Don't move them into the kids' names. Um, that step up in cost basis is a massive um, oversight that a lot of people just do without knowing better, if you will. And that has tens of thousands of dollars of tax implications, right? So make sure you check with your advisors before you transfer any property. Okay? So taxes are huge when we get to this transfer process. So reach out to us. We're here to help. We can review the accounts with you. We can review your estate documents. We can even update your estate documents. So we have certain softwares that we're able to utilize that we can digest everything. We can tell you what it means in English rather than legalese. And we can even adjust these documents for you. Okay? So don't hesitate to reach out. So, Kathleen, I see your question. Questions, how do you get around the penalties someone on Social Security income would face if they inherit more than their allowed amount? So that $2,000 amount, I believe you're referring to Medicaid planning. That's if they're under Medicaid, right? So if they do inherit assets, they would essentially be, um, yep, Social Security income. Now, that's only really applying for the Medicaid planning side of things, though. So, if they do inherit dollars, they would basically have to spend through those dollars before they get additional Medicaid assistance. Um, If we're talking about Medicaid, then understand the exemptions as well, like primary residence, understand the spousal benefits there. I'm not going to go through Medicaid planning right now, but that's a little bit more pointed question on the estate side. So if you do keep dollars in trust, though, that limits their powers, right? So if somebody is on Medicaid, all of the dollars going outright to them would be much worse than staying in trust and they get a 5% withdrawal rate. So that means it's not included in their calculated estate for financial purposes. So if there is any financial aid or Social Security considerations, then you definitely want to have dollars really retained in trust. So that, again, creditors are essentially, Medicaid is pretty much like a creditor. They can't go after those trust assets. They're protected assets. Good question, though. And just in terms of what do I do, I would say just look at your documents, understand what they say. If you do nothing, then hey, there's not going to be any changes, not going to be any results. I know that's the easiest thing to do. It's inertia. We might be like, oh, that was interesting, but doesn't really impact me. But I can tell you some of the things that we went over, simple will adjustment, a revocable living trust. Just because you don't have a tax issue doesn't mean that you don't have a family legacy issue with being able to incorporate a trust, right? So on this note, we have another question, Laurie. If I transfer stock to my grandchildren, do I have to pay capital gains on the stock? Can I deposit into 529 plus transfer the stock? Great question, because when you transfer that stock to a grandchild, you do not pay capital gains because we're not selling it, right? I transfer that from myself to the, maybe it's an UTMA account, a custodial account, the brokerage account for my grandchild. I don't pay anything. I'm gifting them that stock. So let's say I paid $1,000 and I gift them the stock that's worth 5,000. I pay nothing because I gave them $5,000. Their cost basis is still that $1,000 though. Okay. So if they sell that stock tomorrow, they do have a $4,000 capital gain. They pay the capital gains taxes, technically, right? But I have a marginal tax bracket of call it 24%. They have a 0% tax bracket, right? So they can sell that stock and they pay zero taxes on it anyway. All right. Does that answer the question? So, oh, the 529, you cannot gift that to a 529. A 529 plan does have to be cash. Okay. All right. So let's go with gifting a home outright to your kids versus adding their names to the deed to protect the home from being taken by the state. Should Medicaid or long-term care needs be involved? Great question, because you don't want to transfer that house to the kids. So, especially if we're talking about Medicaid, long-term care, the primary residence is a protected asset. Okay? So, if I transfer, let's say I bought this house in 1980, I've been living in it. Now I need some assistance. If I transfer that to my kids, their cost basis is now the $50,000 that I bought it for back in 1980. If they go to sell that house for $500,000, they're going to pay about $180,000 in taxes. Huge difference in terms of paying $0 in taxes if I just add them as the beneficiary on the deed. Okay? So if I add them as beneficiary on the deed, it goes directly to them as soon as something happens to me anyway. So that's going to be a pretty substantial difference of a step up in cost basis. So a step up in cost basis is a massive benefit for anyone in their later years with appreciated property. That applies to real estate, it's non-retirement investment accounts, anything that would appreciate in value that is not a retirement asset. Retirement assets do not get a step up in basis. Non-retirement, non-qualified annuities are also one of the worst things to inherit. So if you do have any annuities, let's take a look at them. Um, they're all of that non-retirement after-tax dollars that are trapped in these annuities. They do not get a step up in basis. They are still taxed as ordinary income to the heirs. Okay. Let me just read through Roberts. So, good question on the follow-up here. With children being named on the property as beneficiaries, and should it be part of the trust? So the huge difference here is how they receive it, right? Either way, it's going to go to the kids, right? As the beneficiary on the deed, that is going to go to them outright. So I pass. They can do whatever they want with the property, right? You might not care about that. You're not around anymore. But maybe it's a house that I want to stay in the family. Maybe it's a family home, and them having their kids, and I want them to keep it. Well, I would definitely prefer that to be in the trust because not only is it protected in the trust from their creditors, from anybody going after them, from potential spouses divorcing them. That's a protected asset. So then I can even control that from the grave and I can say, hey, you're not allowed to sell it. Maybe I fund some life insurance that's going to pay off the property and it's going to cover the maintenance for 50 years. I can do creative things with the trust language that would mandate certain things or restrictive sale powers. I'm not going to get all into the distributed provisions and what we can do with the trust. You can get creative, but it's really just a way that you protect against your kids, other creditors, and divorce and litigation. So going outright is definitely a little bit different because if it is in trust as well, you're also creating some structure, right? If I have three kids and they get it outright, they might be fighting with each other about certain decisions. If I give it to them in trust and I appoint a trustee that's going to govern this trust, maybe it's not even one of the kids. I might have my brother or my sister appointed as trustee to make those management decisions. And that's who is going to really be spearheading that. So my kids aren't going to fight with each other, especially in blended families. That becomes a pretty substantial tool. Let me read through these. Good question on the 529. So if for annual gifting, um, we can gift up to 5 extra year. We can put a lot more into these 529s than the annual gift exclusion. So that's a great question. So we are not limited to that annual gift exclusion, um, especially considering 529 plans. Those are pretty much direct gifts. If I'm giving to their brokerage account, we have that $19,000 limit. And you can even gift more than that, just so everybody knows. So we don't technically get taxed on it. What we do is we take an advance. Remember, I talked about that $15 million lifetime gift exemption, that estate exemption. If I want to give my child $119,000 right now, that's fine because all I'm going to do is gift them that 119. 19 is a current excluded gift for this year. But that $100,000, I still don't have to pay taxes on it I just file a gift tax form this year that says, hey, out of my $15 million of a lifetime gift exemption, take $100,000 off it now. I decided to do it now rather than waiting until I pass, right? So that's what happens if we gift a house or anything like that, anything of substantial value, we need to file that gift tax return, or IRS is going to come after us and tax us on making that gift. Okay? That's a big oversight that if you don't tell your accountant about that on any given year and we gifted $500,000 because it was a house, that can have pretty substantial gift tax consequences at 40% tax rates. All right. Any other questions?
There's one about a living trust. Did you see that one?
Let me see. So a living trust is the same as owning it outright, right? So just because I move it into a living trust doesn't mean that it's transferred to anybody else, right? I still have the same powers. If we want to get more creative, um, we use what's called SLATs, spousal lifetime access trusts. So that's a way that we can get the house, or call it a rental property, any other type of asset, out of our estate right now at the current values, especially if we have estate tax issues. But that's just something where it has to do with the structure of the trust, the type of trust that's set up. Um, but I mean, essentially with this, that would still be a primary residence, if she was going into the nursing home. So we'd have to talk about that a little bit further. Um, all right. So if anybody has any other questions, feel free to send me an email. Happy to get together with everyone. So and we can review documents. We can take a look at assets. We have a financial organizational portal that we can give anybody access to if they want to add all of their assets and just say, hey, what does my financial picture even look like? Get some organization around it. We're happy to give you our input. If you have any other advisors, that's fine. I always call it like getting a second opinion from a doctor. It's always good to get a second opinion. So people that you've worked with might only be investment people or they might be insurance people. We look at it from a holistic perspective on a cross-disciplinary basis here. So understanding the estate objectives with taxes and the investments and insurance side of things. So feel free to reach out. Our website's on here, but just send us an email, and we're happy to get back to you.
Richard, there is one more question there in the chat. It says, so would you place that home in a revocable trust versus a living trust? It was a follow-up to that previous question.
So we'd have to dig deeper into the the certain implications of, are we going to gift the house? Or because it depends on the type of trust. The revocable trust would not trigger that. So correct. That means it stays in their own name. And now it stays within that revocable trust. It now becomes a family trust once we pass. Right? All right, and that's administrative.
Yeah.
Any
And
other questions?
just for those of you that are not reading the chat, the recording of this website will be found on our website, or of this webinar. The recording of the webinar, excuse me, will be found on our website, mrspa.org. You would click the news and events tab on the menu and then look under resources. And that's where the webinar will live once it is attached, once the link is there on the website. We can send those of you that RSVP'd for the webinar a direct link to that once it's set up and ready to go.
Let me jump in. Quick answers since a couple questions came in. If we gifted 100,000 to the 529 plan, you do not have to file a gift tax return actually, because this is basically not a person that you gifted to. It's their education account, and you can fund that up to call it $500,000. So you don't have to file a gift tax return, and you take that state tax deduction just for several years in the future. You can't take it all at once. And I'm located here in Anne Arundel County. I'm between Baltimore and Annapolis. I have an office up in Towson area. I know that people are kind of scattered all across the state, so I'm mostly on Zoom anyway. So we can easily set up Zooms and share information, so you don't have to go up to the office or anything. And send me an email if there's any other questions at this point, okay? Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thank you. Wow, you're good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
There's a lot more we could go over, but I'm not going to put everyone to
so
sleep.
much. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you for doing this for us, Richard. We really appreciate it.
Yes.
Of course, I'm happy to.
A lot of information.